All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the third edition of the NAC Check-in Chat. Really appreciate everyone coming on today. We had over 60 people registered today, so we keep building that, which is really exciting for this format, and I hope everyone's enjoying it. I will again throw out the offer. If you are joining in and there's something you'd like to see us do differently, very open to that. So just drop me a line, and we'll be glad to listen to your suggestions. And so I'm going to let a few more people in here, and maybe I could ask one of my co-hosts here to maybe to keep an eye on that. All right. Okay, wanted to remind, just a few reminders. Want to remind everyone the next NAC Check-in Chat is slated for April 7th. The free registration links for that will be out very soon. That session will feature Thanasi Papoulias of Strategic Instinct and Marketing. Thanasi was a NAC member. He's a theater operator member, and he's gone off into his own venture, and he's an expert on social media and social media practices. It's an area we haven't covered yet on any of our calls, even going back into last year. So he is going to join us. A reminder for everybody, please stay muted on the call, but I would like you to use that chat function to ask questions, please. We want a lot of input, we want a lot of questions, and we'd like a lot of back and forth. So please think of your questions now, think of them as we're going, and please submit them via the chat. All right, so now for today's program, we've invited a couple members of the NAC Government Relations Committee to give us an update on all things government relations related. The committee's headed up by Don Lear, and today we're joined by Gina DeSanto and Dan Harrow of National Amusements. So we're happy to have them on board, and we'll get them to start their program in a second. But first, we want to hear from our sponsor, who today is Sauer Brands, the makers of Kernel Seasons and Duke's Mayonnaise. So I'm going to ask Teresa Boyson to share her screen. Teresa has one of the coolest titles in the business. She's the professor of fun foods with Sauer Brands. So Teresa, I invite you to take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me. All right. Can you see that? Chris, yes. You got my presentation? Can you see it? Excellent.
Yep, you're good.
Well, as if there were not enough changes last year, the folks at Kernel Seasons decided we needed to add just a few more, and we've partnered up with Sauer Brands. So the good news is they are still manufacturing Kernel Seasons. It's all still the same folks, still the same great quality, but now I'm going to be bugging you.
Teresa, you hit the mute button. You hit your mute.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Chris got tired of me already.
Never get tired of you, Teresa.
Well, as if we couldn't do enough, we have now added some additional products. So I'm going to start out just reviewing the products that you know and love from me. Let's see here. Kernel Seasons popcorn seasoning. Make your popcorn sales pop. Boost your per caps with Kernel Seasons. If I've been doing my job properly this entire time, everybody knows about Kernel Seasons. Everybody knows why you have to offer it. Hopefully, if anybody is not offering it, this is a great time. Contact me. You can add it to your concession stands. It's a really easy ad for your per caps. Every dollar counts, every quarter counts. So get that seasoning added. And I know you guys aren't wanting to bring in a whole lot of new products, you know, not really knowing what the crowds are going to be for the next couple of months. It's a great, easy ad to throw on there. no increased queue time, breaks your popcorn seasoning sales so everybody gets their own. I always tell people, don't look at your popcorn seasoning sales, look at your popcorn sales. Everybody wants to get their own bucket because parents don't want to share what the kids are eating for their flavors and all that kind of fun stuff. You know, I always say the weirdest flavors sell the most popcorn because nobody wants to share them. We are SQF certified. We have a long 18-month shelf life, and even that is a best buy. Those of you who have some seasonings still in stock, if you need extensions on that, let me know. We can issue that. It's just made of seasoning, so the flavor will fade a little bit, but nothing to worry about. And as always, we provide the displays and point of sale material, whether you're getting the seasoning from us or from one of our distributors. Two different programs. We have the free shake-on, which right now some customers are still able to leave out their stands, and they're offering deli papers to use to, you know, to hold the jar, or they're pre-portioning it themselves. Another kind of grab and go option are the mini shakers if you want to add that to an add-on purchase. Then we have new in 2021. We have sriracha seasoning. These are all the things that you were going to see at CinemaCon last year. Our front-facing display, this is a terrific display with little clear shelves so you can put any flavors that you want on there. We have digital posters for both our free shake-on and our mini shaker program. I can send you a link that has that stuff. And then new for end of 2020, 2021, social distancing stickers that drive to popcorn sales. So you guys are buying that kind of stuff anyway. If you need it, if it has the Kernel Seasons brand, then we get to pay for it and we'll send it out to you. Just let me know what you need. Now for the fun new Sauer Brand stuff. This is one of my favorite little call outs. Spices make up 1/4% of an operator's food cost, but 80% of the food's flavor. If you're a dine-in, if you're bistro, if you're doing something with your own recipes, make sure you're not skimping on those spices and seasoning. It's such a small portion of the food cost, but that's what's going to keep your customers coming back. And the fun product, Duke's. Duke's got twang. If you're not familiar with Duke's mayonnaise, you're probably not in the Southeast. It's a very regional thing that we are working to change. It's been the same mayonnaise recipe since 1917. And what makes it unique is that it is sugar-free. The recipe was actually developed when there were sugar rations and they couldn't get sugar. So that's why it was created without, and it's just a superior flavor. We just had feedback before this call that somebody travels far and wide to be able to get it for their recipes because they just won't settle for less. We've partnered up and we are supporting the Duke's Bowl Mayo Classic for football. It's a really fun brand. They do some really great stuff. And for theater, everybody who is serving, well, theater and stadium, anybody who is serving chicken tenders, make sure that you're using our Duke's Tip Cups because they really are phenomenal. Southern sauces, this is great for back of house, for wings, for sandwiches. Let me know if you need samples of this stuff because I have all of it. And last but not least, the Duke's salad dressings. Salads look great on a menu board. We all know that in concession, people don't actually go to buy the salads, but they look really great. They drive to the line and then people buy those other things. So don't be buying bulk salad dressing that you have to portion out yourself or that's going to go bad before you use it. Use these great looking portion packs. And you never know, salads could be making a comeback anywhere if anybody else is dealing with a little extra quarantine weight like I'm going to be. So when you think of flavor, please think of Sauer, Duke's, Kernel Seasons, and let me know how I can help you. Thanks so much for having me and for humoring me.
All right. Well, thank you, Teresa, and thank you for sponsoring today's program. I would like to invite anybody who's interested in sponsoring, please drop me a line and we can make that happen. So thanks again, Teresa, and thanks Sauer Brands.
Thank you.
I'm going to, Don, I'm going to call up your
Okay.
You're part of the program, and I'm going to turn it over to Don Lear. Don, take it away.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Teresa and Sauer Brands, for sponsoring this seminar. It's very much appreciated for those in the trade. Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a great day. My name is Don Lear. I'm the Director of Food Service at Oberto Specialty Meats. And it's been my privilege to have been on the NAC Government Relations Committee for a number of years now. We have a great group of members, the best, some among the best and the brightest in the entire industry. And today's seminar is really going to be talking first about what we do and how we do it. And then we're going to hand off to Gina DeSanto and then Dan Hurl to talk about some very specific topics about what's going on right now in the trade, okay? So the purpose of the Government Relations Committee, and I may lapse into GRC jargon because that's such a mouthful, is really to identify and track strategic topics which may impact NAC members. I mean, we can get into some tactical things at times, but over the last number of years, there have been some really big, important strategic topics that could cost members a lot of money and change the way they operate. And not that we necessarily impact how these proposed legislations are going to happen, but we do track it. And as I'll get into in a minute, we do have an alliance with other trade associations in order to hopefully get the result that we want, okay? So that is what we do. We meet every month via telephone and now Zoom for no more than an hour. And so my role as chair is really, I think, chief administrative officer. Scheduling the meetings, making sure we have them, putting together an agenda, things of that sort. So in between meetings, appropriate topics, updates to things that we've been discussing or new topics are shared among our committee members. There's a number of emails, usually just a link to a website, so we all have a sense of what's going on. And so our agenda every month has ongoing topics because they don't just come and go in a month, and new topics. And so Chris, if you could turn the page, the members of our committee are on the screen, or will be on the screen. So as I say, our committee has some of the best and the brightest in the trade, okay? So I won't go through every person's name, but again, it's a privilege for me to work with everybody on this committee because everybody has something to add. They all have experience in their respective channels, be it exhibitor or diversified concessionaire. And it's just a joy to work with everybody because of what we do. And so when you see them at the next, we were just talking ahead of time about the next time we're all together, please be sure you thank the people on this list for helping out. Okay. Next slide. I should also say that we really don't say it this way, but our patron saint of our committee is Robert Perkins of Act 5, because Robert was the only person on this committee way back when. And so he kind of helped us get grounded, and it kind of took off from there, okay? And he's still involved all these years later. So some of the things that we do is that we don't just have an echo chamber talking with each other, but one of the things that actually Dan Borski did, based on a number of us down in, if you remember the NAC Expo in Tampa many years ago, in which there was some discussion about why don't we work with other trade associations that may have government lobbyists, et cetera. And so Dan took the ball, and vending associations, trade associations like vending or NRA, National Restaurant Association, the American Beverage, used to be ABA, now I think it's called Beverage Association, okay? I may have said vending, IAVM, there's a couple of others as well. So once a quarter, or at least before COVID, there would be a gathering in Washington, D.C., and the various representatives would get together and talk about key topics. In this case, Dan, who's on our committee and still is, would come back and kind of report what the lay of the land is and what are some of the hot topics that we may not even have identified yet, or some updates for other topics. So this is something that NAC took the leadership in getting all of these various trade associations together, because it can only help and have some synergy for us to be talking together, okay? And so we're rather unselfish. I mean, the NAC website many times has links to other trade associations pages that have critical information on it. Gina is going to talk with us in a minute about what's going on with NATO. And we have a close relationship with NATO, and we work with them. I think that was an association I forgot to mention. They're part of that quarterly meeting as well. So it works out very, very well. In one area that it happens, but I think there's some opportunity, is for the various manufacturers to get more involved. Some of our members, manufacturer members, have very developed trade association personnel and government relations departments. And so there are times that maybe we want to get a candy company involved with the National Confectioners Association or somebody else. And so those are some areas of opportunity. But by and large, we work very well with all the manufacturers and of course with the other trade associations. So that is what we do. We do meet every month faithfully, unless there's just no topics, which that doesn't hardly ever happen, right? Especially these days. And so that is what the Government Relations Committee does. And and those folks on that list are comprised mostly of NAC board members, although there are some others that are on there because of their trade knowledge and expertise. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gina DeSanto, because Gina is, besides having her day job, I think she wants to be the president of the United States with all the associations and work that she's involved with. And she's going to explain a little bit about what's going on with some of the financial relief packages for COVID, which are so important to so many members. Gina?
Gina, before you begin, I'd just like to invite people, if they have questions, please to use the chat function. We'll be monitoring those, and I'll make sure that we relay any messages to our panel here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris and Don. Don, I can assure you and everyone else that I have no intention of ever running for president of the United States. So let's just make that completely clear. But I do enjoy volunteering my time, and I've been involved in the Government Relations Committee for quite a few years also. And as many of you know, Don mentioned that we are, we do a lot of work with NATO, and many of our memberships overlap between NATO and NAC. So, and even NATO obviously is just for movie theater owners, but a lot of the things that happen there affect stadiums, arenas, and many of the vendors and manufacturers even. So it's a widespread net. And I think my biggest item to do today is to, if you're a movie theater owner and you are not a member of NATO yet, national NATO, I encourage you to join. Membership is free until July of this year, and they're going to reevaluate then after that. But all the information I get, I'm also president of NATO of Pennsylvania, the regional division of NATO, and I just send out that information to all our regional members in Pennsylvania. It's endless what they are doing. They are doing all the heavy lifting for these grants. And to join, you can see the information on the screen. It's NATO online /about/become a member, or just go to the actual website and click on membership. It's super simple to join, it's free, and I encourage you to do that. I will give you a few updates on what's going on with the SFOG, otherwise the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. So we made it an acronym and called it SFOG. And this was established for economic relief to special industries, movie theaters, non-publicly owned, music venues, and museums. The grant's over $16 billion. And the application is set to finally open on April 8th. So everyone's pretty excited about that because we had rumors that it would open as early as February. And there's many theaters and other venues that are hanging on by their fingernails to get some of the grant money. And this is all going, the SFOG runs through the Small Business Association, the SBA. And they have established a portal for the grants and the applications. And I will, it's an easy website to remember. I can give it, I'll read it to you, but if you need it, we can put it up in the chat room also. It's svoggrantportal.sba.gov, but there's only one G in it. And it's one of the, I didn't put that up on my slide because I got it too late, the information, I'm sorry. But so svoggrantportal.sba.gov. So, and on March 22nd, the SBA also released new frequently asked question guidelines. And these are also at the SVOG portal. So please, I encourage you to go there, read those questions, read the updated ones. And if you're a member of NATO, you will get all the information pretty much spoon-fed to you on those, where the new questions are and things like that. There's also going to be a webinar on March 30th for the how to do the application process, the SVOG. And the SBA is encouraging that whoever the person is that's going to be filling out that application for your company, that they attend that webinar, because it's going to be very detailed and a very informative presentation. And there'll also be a recording of that webinar available afterwards. And then good news, even more good news, after the April 8th announcement, you can apply now both for PPP2 and also the SVOG grant. So there's items you have to do that, but you can apply for both. Originally, when the SVOG came out, you were not allowed to, you had to pick between one or the other one, whichever better suited your company. And now they are making that available for both. And I was hoping I could announce today that the PPP2 deadline application, which is currently at March 31st, expires March 31st, but it has passed the House and is moving in the Senate, and they are trying to extend it to June 30th of 2021 for the PPP2 extension. So it's very, very close. We had heard it was going to be early this week, so it will be any day now that they don't expect it to be held up at all in the Senate, that should pass very easily and quickly, if anything happens easily or quickly in the government. So other than that, I just have one other thing. There is the ICA, which is the Independent Cinema Alliance, and that is for smaller movie theaters. And we do education and studio advocacy. And we have the ICA Marketplace, a place where you can do your shopping at discount prices for your theaters. And I did miss the COVID relief at natodc.com. If you are a member of NATO, you may write to that email address with your questions about the SVOG and PPP2, and Jackie Brennan and Esther Braha are both there to answer your questions, and they get 75 to 100 questions a day, and they're very, very good at following up. And I believe that is the end of my presentation. So, join now, make your life easier, join NATO, join NAC, of course. And if you're a theater too, join Cinema Alliance. Join. Thank you very much.
Quick question, Gina, the webinar on March 30th, is that a SBA offering?
Yes.
Okay, and so folks can find it via the SBA, but I would also point out that we'll try to get a hold of that webinar information and get that published under our banner as well.
I can get that for you, yes.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now we're going to go to Dan to give a quick update on some topics. And some of these are ones that have been resolved, but it kind of shows you the strategic nature of the committee and some of the topics that we deal with. Dan?
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for having me today. So I'm Dan Harrell. I'm with National Amusements Showcase Cinemas. I'm also on the NATO Government Relations Committee, and I'm also part of the NATO Advocacy Committee. Hard to say there. And anybody can be part of that committee as well. So that's one of the things that you can join as part of NATO. And what that does is it helps people reach out to their local congressmen and senators and help push legislation through. So you can be a part of actually shaping the legislation as it's being made, part of the sausage, I guess you'd say. I do want to start by saying thank you to Teresa. If you don't work with Teresa, you're really missing out. She is by far one of the best partners we work with. She's just there for us, super fun to be with, and will do anything for you. So thank you, Teresa. We wanted to talk about a couple of the wins we had. NATO was very big in pushing both of these items. In fact, a couple years back, I was able to go to DC and lobby on Capitol Hill, and we talked to a bunch of congressmen, senators, and we were pushing both of these topics. So the first topic is the ASCAP BMI consent decrees. So this all kind of came back under the Trump administration. He was one of his commitments was to deregulation, and he wanted to cut as much regulation out as possible. So he started reviewing all the consent decrees that were in there. One of them was the Paramount consent decree. The other one was the ASCAP BMI consent decree, which protected movie theaters from paying the royalties to ASCAP BMI. And under this protection, any of the music that was in the movie was paid for by the studio, and as it should be. But this came up, and we lobbied hard on Capitol Hill. We went for on and on and on. And at last it came back that they were going to keep these consent decrees in place. And I think it had a lot to do with everything that we did on Capitol Hill, all the letters we wrote, all the people we contacted. And that just saves, anybody in the movie industry millions of dollars in some cases. The Paramount consent decree, there wasn't a lot of appetite to fight that, and in which case we didn't really lobby on that as much, and it was eliminated. And the Paramount consent decree prevented movie theaters and studios from being related in the same place. Ironically enough, National Amusements is kind of related to the Viacom CBS, so we didn't really lobby too hard on that. The other big thing that came up in 2017, when Congress enacted the Tax Act, they have what's called a qualified improvement property, where you're able to depreciate your improvements in your buildings over a 15-year period. Well, when it all came about and the bill finally went into law, that 15 years somehow turned into 39 years. So if you made improvements in your building, you spend millions of dollars on luxury seating or new concession stands or stuff, instead of being able to depreciate that over a 15-year span, you now have to depreciate it over 39 years. So the cost savings was dramatic. And we lobbied on Capitol Hill for expansion, to go back to the 15 years as it was intended. And it was pretty funny talking to a lot of the senators and congressmen about this topic, because the Republicans, which wrote the legislation, kept saying it was a mistake that it got written into 39 years. And yet some of the Democrats that we talked to said it was intentional because it didn't perform out to the correct dollar amount for the tax savings. So they kind of intentionally listed it at 39 years, knowing that they'd go back and fix it later. So it went on. And so we were battling back and forth and writing a lot of letters and trying to get this change back to 15 years. And all of a sudden, in one of the COVID relief bills, they made the change and it was back to 15 years. And some of the companies, especially the larger companies like AMC, Regal, such and so forth, saw millions of dollars in tax savings because of that. So that was a huge win for us. One of the other things we're kind of working on now, and I know a lot of people are going through this with all the COVID regulations, and this has affected us. Anybody that has the Coca-Cola Freestyle machines or using self-service soda machines know that under a lot of the state's COVID guidelines, you're not allowed to use self-service soda machines. So back in June, when we opened our Ohio location, we didn't have that regulation. So we were able to let customers use the Freestyle machine, provided we used different protocols to make sure the machines were getting sanitized on a regular basis. When we opened Rhode Island, we had to staff a person there. And then Massachusetts opened up and we had to staff a person there. And then New York opened and we had to staff a person at those locations as well. So we're spending a couple $100s a day in payroll just to have someone pour drinks. And it just seemed kind of crazy. So we started reaching out to the governors and to the governor's offices and writing letters, working with the local NATO affiliates like Tone and New York NATO. And through pressure and a lot of conversation, we were able to first get Rhode Island lifted so we can pour sodas there. Now we just recently got Massachusetts as of Monday, we can pour sodas there. And so now we're really working on New York. But I'm sure this is something that's happening all across. And one of the things that I would suggest is that you really open a dialogue with, the governor's office. Let them know that, you have protocols in place to make this safe, that you're not using the same cups, that people are required to get a new cup if they get a refill, that you're putting this on your sanitation schedule so that the machines are getting wiped down. And then how much money that it is costing you to pour, or in some cases, like I think Cinemark was actually, instead of having someone staffed at the machines, they went to a bottled product. So now you're handing out bottled beverages, which cost us more, but also aren't as good for the environment. So there's a lot of angles that you can take on reaching out to the local governments. One of the things that I really found fascinating when I first started joining with NATO and way back when I was a part of Mid-Atlantic NATO was just how accessible government really is. You think that you can't make any changes, that you're just some lonely person that doesn't have a say, and these people are all getting paid, or it's the lobbyists that are making the decisions. But every time that I've testified in a Senate committee hearing or been on a panel, you realize that you do have a voice and that you can make a difference in some of these things, and that just these two big examples, were huge. Now there's some things you can't control. You can't control minimum wage increases. When we start, you can voice your opinion on them, but it's something that's going to get pushed through. So you kind of have to pick and choose your battles on where you want to fight, because some of the things you're going to win and some of the things you're not going to win. And I always like to try to go in with certain legislation and say, if we were not going to stop it totally, can we get some sort of exemption for movie theaters? And we've been pretty successful in getting exemptions as well, just so we can get people up there and testify that, hey, this really does affect the theater negatively, but it might not affect other businesses the same way, and we're able to get that exemption. The other thing I noticed is that they don't want lobbyists up there testifying. They don't want presidents of huge companies up there testifying. I mean, that's all fine and dandy, and they get their say, but they're heard all the time. These people really like to hear from the smaller operators, or even in some cases, I've had managers go up and testify. There was a bill, a predictive scheduling bill that we testified on in Maryland and in Connecticut, but in Maryland, we had, I got up and talked, and then I had one of my managers get up and talk. And when he talked about how this was going to affect him and how he put himself through school at the movie theater, and how predictive scheduling would have just changed the whole way he worked, and it would have been detrimental to his way of living and how he was able to get through school, it just really really helps. So, just because you're a small company, just because, you're maybe even a manager at a location, you can help push change. I think that's pretty much it I have on my list. Open to questions.
Dan, we actually just had a question come in, Dan, and it's, would touchless valves be a viable option to help persuade governors to allow self-serve beverage?
Absolutely. In fact, the Coca-Cola freestyle machines have the touchless option where you can scan and do the, and that was one of the things that we sent to the governor's office, was a whole demo on how customers don't even have to touch the machine. They can, scan the QR code in the corner of the screen, and then they can operate the machine from their phones. So I do think that had an impact. And I think, anything that you can use to persuade, government officials is important.
All right. I don't see any other questions. I actually would have, and maybe I don't mean to put our panel on the spot here, but it's really interesting to sit in. I'm blessed to be able to sit in on your monthly meetings and hear about all the things you talk about and all the things that have happened behind the scenes. Is there anything going on in some of the other topics like sugary beverage, and I know like the music rights issue has been largely taken care of, but is there any news on some of those other items?
Yeah, Chris, this is Don. Various states are still proposing taxes on sugary beverages, or Hawaii is the latest, for example. So that issue is not past us. Obviously, COVID and getting the relief packages have been on everybody's mind, and that's been the forefront of all efforts to help the industry and the various players survive. But as things come back to normal, thank God, all these things are going to still be there, and then we're still going to be talking about sugary beverage taxes. We'll talk about the banning of plastic straws and other plastic ware. I mean, it's one thing to have a straw go out, but how do you not serve food or other products without plastic ware? So those are all difficult topics. Another issue out there, and we give the hat tip to Denise DeSuter for finding out about this months ago, is in San Francisco. They passed legislation talking about how a business, in this case a theater, but it's much broader than that, has to segregate their trash in the various components. And even though there may be 3 or 4 different types of trash barrels in the theater, one for each type, doesn't mean the consumer is going to follow it, right? So what then has to happen is the theater or any other business has to then go through their own trash to make sure it all gets done correctly. Otherwise, the city can fine you, and after a couple of more times, the fines increase. Well, that's just San Francisco. But what if that type of legislation were to go national? Now all of a sudden, you've got additional costs, kind of like what Dan just talked about on extra personnel pouring soda. It's not that one thing's going to kill you, but it's a million different razor cuts to your profitability.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up Denise and AM at the San Francisco, because that is super fascinating to hear her talk about what they have to do to sort their trash and how much they have to go through for this. And every bit of legislation starts somewhere. Mm-hmm. That straw debate started somewhere. Every bit comes in somewhere, and it might be some small town, or it might be a very liberal area, or it might be a very conservative area. And you're thinking, oh, this will never hit, our area, but it always trickles down. And if you don't start the fight at the beginning, it's harder and harder as that ball and that momentum get going to stop it in the end. And that's why it is important that everybody communicate. And that's one of the things we do on the committee, is just talk about, well, I'm in the East Coast, some people are in the West Coast, some people are in South Florida, what's going on in their areas, so we can all kind of have ears to the ground and see what's happening, and at least know what to expect and what to fight and what to, maybe we can live with.
Don, I know you mentioned that some of these issues maybe are were put on the back burner, but they're going to come back strong. Could you make the case that they might even come back stronger? Areas like taxes or increased fines, just to help municipalities recover revenue that's been lost over the past 12 months or so.
Absolutely. I think that in one of the government relation committee seminars like this that we have with some other associations, it was mentioned that the state governments, for that matter, the federal government, even before COVID, their budgets weren't balanced, right? Now it's even worse. In some cases, you have eroding tax bases, or you have other expenses. They have other expenses, which is just crushing their budgets. And so, how do you balance it? How do you get more money? Well, fines, regulations, extra taxes, all of which goes towards that. And of course, that means either the business, the exhibitor, let's say, has to eat it, which cuts into their profitability, or they have to try to pass it on to the consumer. Well, the consumer, especially coming out of COVID, may not be all that keen on that, even though I think we all would agree that we've seen prices on food products in supermarkets go up because of their extra expenses as well. So it's this juggling act behind all these things. And we're very concerned once everything gets on a more normal, whatever that is, footing, that you're going to see a lot more state taxes coming into effect, and it may not be federal. And then, because when it gets into the 50 states, it becomes very tough to follow.
Right. One of the things that actually just came up, West Virginia wants to eliminate their income tax. And that sounds great, right? No income tax like Florida, other states that don't have income tax. But now they need to figure out a way to pay for it. And one of the ways they want to pay for it is through beverage tax. So,
well, all the more reason that we're so grateful to have the great members of this committee out there working for us. So that is appreciated for all those reasons and more. So I guess I would, we don't have any more questions. I would add that SVOG webinar information link is in the chat right now. One of our members was kind enough to give that to us. So I put that out, and we'll put it out and publish it more as well.
Hey, Chris, I actually have a question if we have just a second.
We do. Go ahead, Teresa.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna put you guys in, maybe an awkward spot with maybe a complicated question here right at the end, but hoping that, theaters are eligible for the SVOG funds, and then seeing what we're doing now, and then, some of the things that you're seeing come up in government regulations, which, a perfect example is, okay, everything right now is portion pack, plastic, disposable, and we see it coming that some of those fines are going to come back pretty heavy, that people are going to want to go more eco-friendly, minimum wage, and some more automation. Do you guys have recommendations for operators on some of the areas, aside from covering lost expenses, where they should think about investing those SVOG funds to prepare for what's coming up in government relations and restrictions later?
Teresa, this is Don. We've had some discussions about that, but we kind of netted out as a trade association. It's very hard to recommend something to everybody in the channel, right? So the idea was that every individual business has to make the decision that's best for them. And I know that sounds like a little bit of a cop-out, but sometimes that's what you have to land on, because some of these issues get a little complex, and depending upon the geographic footprint and which states some theaters or diversified concessionaires are in, it matters. So one size doesn't always fit all.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think that was an excellent point. I mean, there's some operators that, as soon as the straw debate came out, they quickly switched to a paper straw, and they wanted to be forefront in saying that they were using these products. But then there's others that maybe don't agree. So you can't really lump everybody in together. And even the minimum wage debate, when we started talking about that, Northeast, we're already almost at for $15 an hour or above anyway. So $15 minimum wage doesn't affect us at all. So us talking about it or devoting energy to it doesn't really make as much sense.
You know, one little quick story, and Teresa, this isn't about your question, but it's what Dan just talked about, minimum wage. I think that maybe 4 years ago, increased minimum wage was beginning to get on the radar, and our committee talked about it. And again, as I've mentioned many times, we've got some of the best and brightest in the trade. And they said something then I'll always remember. They said, what's going to happen is we and other industries, QSR, you name it, are going to figure out ways to automate things so they don't have to employ as many people or go to more part-time employees. And you've seen in those 4 years exactly that happening. So, I mean, I don't own a business, right? But the folks who are on our committee, they may not own it either. Some do, but others are close enough to understanding all the financial ramifications where they understood exactly what was going to happen, and they were right.
All right, I will throw it out there. Any more questions from anybody? Great question.
Thank you.
If otherwise, maybe just to wrap up here, I just throw it back to each of you. If we just want to go around the horn, if you have anything else to add.
Gina, you want to start?
Sure. I just, dovetail off of what Dan and Don have both just said. I mean, it's really important state by state to know your legislators, know who you need to talk to. If you have an issue come up, no matter what your business, it's great to know you're from your local county commissioners all the way up to, as you know, friends with us, the House and Senate, and the governor if you can. It's just that, and they definitely do prefer to talk to the independent owner of a business that can tell you hardships and what they do, or and not everything obviously is a hardship. Well, it is right now, I think, but it's just important. They'd much rather hear from us with the theater or the bowling alley or whatever it is in the stadium, the baseball stadium in your town or your city, than the big CEO from a company and a worldwide company. So it's just really important. The grassroots is so important for all lobbying and for all everything for legislative issues. It's just really important to be active and know who you need to reach out to and who you should be at least communicating with. That you don't have to be friends with them, but you should at least know who they are. That should wrap it up for me.
Dan?
Yeah, I would say exactly what Gina said is really get to know people that you can reach out to and have someone that you can talk to. And like she said, it is the smaller people that they want to hear from, the smaller operators that really have a hardship where it affects them more. And then also anybody on this call, make sure that you're communicating. If you see something come up in the news, don't just sit on it and say, oh, this is only happening in my little small town. Let the committee know, because this is, like I said, it's something that will come up somewhere else, or maybe it's something that we can call to action on.
Yeah, that's very, very important. The listing of GRC members that we showed earlier on here is also on the NAC website. And so you can go in there and look at it. You will notice that we have a good balance between exhibitors and diversified concessionaires. We also have one member from Canada, and they're how they handle things are totally different than the U.S. I mean, totally different. So it's a good balance, and I would say that if you have any interest in getting involved with the NAC Board of Directors or the various regional committees or any other committee, reach out to Chris or the current president, Adam Gottlieb, and make your interest known, because we always want folks who want to volunteer and are interested in these topics. It may not be government relations, it could be something totally different. But we always want great talent to be on the committees to help what we do. So thank you, everybody, for attending today. And if you have any questions, you can certainly reach out to anybody on this phone call or anybody on this Zoom meeting or anybody on our committee to ask some questions. So thank you. And Chris, thanks for setting this all up.
Yeah, thank you, Don, for wrapping that up very nicely, I think. Thanks again to the Government Relations Committee, Don, Dan, and Gina for taking the time with us today, and for the entire committee for all your time and efforts. These are people who are giving freely of their very valuable time for the betterment of all of us. And so, again, we're very grateful for that. And also, we're very grateful to Sauer Brands as to be our sponsor today. And thanks to Teresa for coming on and telling us more about Sauer Brands and Kernel Seasons and the brand new offering that she has, which is Duke's Mayonnaise, which we're hearing great things about.
Thanks so much, Chris. Thanks for having me.
All right. So just before we wrap up, just another few reminders. We've seen this before, but never hurts to say it one more time. The next check-in chat's going to be on April 7th. We'll have registration links out for that shortly. The session's going to feature, we're going to talk about social media and social media practices. And we're going to have Thanasi Papopoulos of Strategic Instinct and Marketing, who was he was a theater operator, and now he's broken off into a new venture, and we're excited to hear from him. And what he's going to have for you is a lot of really great information on all of your social media practices. I think finally, I'd just like to mention that a recording of this session will be ready in the next few days, and we'll get that out via NAC social media. So with that being said, I want to remind you that you've been watching the NAC Check-in Chat. It's a production of the National Association of Concessionaires, where food meets fun. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you much.